By the end of this video, you'll be able to animate a professional assembly of a CAD model in Blender. I'm going to walk you through the workflow that I use and give you some good tips that will make your animations look better than any CAD software could produce. So this is the object that we're going to animate today. It's just a simple piston assembly taken from Fusion 360. We've got sort of casing here, we've got front end caps. If you can see in here with the materials, we've got a sort of rubber casing on the actual cylinder itself, and a ball joint in the front. We're not going to be animating the ball joint, we're just going to keep that together as one separate part, but you can see it's all a bunch of separate subcomponents that were designed in Fusion 360, and instead of using Fusion 360's default animation system, we're going to use Blender's because it is a lot better. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to parent some objects together. We're going to keep this ball joint together like we said, so what we're going to do is we're going to select this, shift select the housing, press Control P and set parent to object. And now, if we move this one, the actual the ball itself moves with the housing. Great. So now we're going to go over to the animation window here. Now mine's will probably look a little bit different to yours. I've just set up my workspace a little bit differently. So what you want to do to get it to look like mine, you can adjust these panels if you want. You can right click on the edges and you can do vertical splits. You can do like a horizontal split, and you can change the actual viewport. So I've got two 3D viewports. One of them is set up to the camera, so if you can move about like normal, but if you press 0 on the numpad, it will lock to the camera view. So we leave that as it is. That's our kind of preview window. So when we have our render view, you can see it there, and we can animate things in this workspace here. And this is just in the sort of general solid view mode. And then at the bottom we have the timeline here. And this is what we're going to use to animate. We're actually going to switch between this and the graph editor a few times, just so that we can adjust how our animations look. So while we're in here, we're going to select the render settings for our actual animation. So you can come over here, you can select the frame rate. So we are going to go with 30 FPS for now, just to make it a little bit easier to render. 30 FPS is generally good. You can, when you actually render it, you can up it to 60 if you want, but working at 30 usually makes it run a little bit faster. And then there's the actual frame range here. So this is essentially the length of the animation on the timeline down here. So what we're going to go for is 8 seconds. So we're just going to go 30 times 8. Nope, come on. 30 times 8, if I select the right things. 240. There we are. We're going to go with a 240 frame animation. So the idea I've got is we're going to animate the sort of exploded view when all the parts come out. We've got these tie rods in here that are all going to come out like that. And we're going to make the actual camera itself kind of zoom out. So if you can imagine, if we start moving all these parts out, it gets out with the actual frame of the camera. So in the scene here, which is where I've got my camera set up, we can adjust the focal length. Right now it's very, very long, so it looks quite orthographic, but it is still technically in perspective. So what we're going to do is we can animate this. Pretty much any value in Blender you can animate with these little keyframe markers here. So we're going to have the camera zoom out, and then we're going to essentially loop the animation so that it zooms back in by the end. There. So we've got a drawing we're going to use as the reference for the animation right here. So you can see all the parts as they explode, they go into the exploded view here. This is why we're going to keep the ball joint together, just because it's kind of mounted inside the housing there. We're actually not going to animate these seal rings coming off of the piston, just because you essentially get them clipping through here and it looks a bit weird in Blender. You can do that, you can animate like the scale of them, you can make them sort of, say, animate out to here and then get pulled backwards or something like that if you want. But we're not going to do that today, we're just going to do the, we're just going to keep the cylinder, the actual piston here, we're going to keep it all together as one part. So we're going to unhide everything, we're going to press Alt-H, by the way, if you see me hiding things, just H to hide things. If you select something, Shift-H hides everything but that part, and then Alt-H unhides everything. So the first thing we're going to animate is the actual ball joint here, and because we've parented the actual ball to the joint itself, we only need to animate the joint. So what we're going to do is we're going to take its current position, we're going to go over to the Object tab here, and we're animating everything along the Y-axis. So we're going to put a keyframe in its current position on the Y-axis, we're going to go right to the end of the animation, so frame 240, put another keyframe, and then we're going to go to, let's say, about frame 50, and we are going to extend its position to, let's say, where would it need to be? We're going to keep the piston sort of where it is, and we're going to animate everything around that. So we're going to give it enough space for the tie rod, so we're going to animate it to about there. We're going to create another keyframe, and then 240 minutes. I think we're going to go to. So we're going to get copy its position from here. We're going to go to frame 190, copy the position back in here, and create another keyframe there. So now, if we zoom out a little bit and we hit space to play the animation, you can see from the start it goes out to there and it comes back in. So we're actually going to, I've decided we're going to move this forward a little bit so that it stays where it is towards the start of the animation, just by about 20 frames. So now, as the animation loops, moves out here, then moves back in, and loops back to the start. There we go. So, we're going to use this now. Like I said, we're going to zoom the camera out. So we're going to select the camera. We are going to, in a similar way, animate the current. We're going to keyframe the current focal length at the start and the end. We're actually going to move this to 20 so that it all links up. And then, where did we put that? We are going to move to frame 70 here, which is where we put our other animation here. And then we're going to zoom the focal length out to about here, 202. And then we will again move back to where the animation starts again, frame 170, and keyframe it there. So you can see it zooms out, and then once this moves, it zooms back in. Now you can see it doesn't quite line up, right? This does manage to get out of the edge of the frame. Also quickly, I've decided I'm going to increase the frame rate to 60 here, just because I feel like the animation's a little slow. It takes up a little bit too much time. So it's now down to 4 seconds, and that's a lot better. So what we're going to do, we're going to select the camera. We are going to go into the graph editor, and we're going to hit normalize, right? So you can hit control to kind of, and control middle mouse, like middle mouse button to kind of move this around to scale it to what you want. And we're effectively going to start using the curves here to animate the camera. So we want the camera to be a little bit further along its animation path by the time we get to here. So what we're going to do is we're going to extend this outwards a little, maybe a tiny bit more. And you can hold shift. You can make it do things like this. You can make it kind of wobble in and out. But if you hold shift, I believe. Yeah. No, sorry. If you hold control, it locks it. It kind of snaps it along. Right. It's a bit much. And you can essentially just play with this until you get something that you think looks good. And obviously it's going to be different for every animation. So we're going to adjust it a bit there. Just to sort of mirror it as it comes back in. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. And if you want, you can play with the end value here, so you can make it come down a bit smoother if you'd like. But I think that's good. Right, okay. So, now it's essentially just a case of repeating the process for all of the other parts. And we can kind of choose how we want them to animate. So now we're going to animate the tie bolts, and the way I want to do this is I want to have them come out in a sort of staggered fashion. So you'd have one here come out a bit, and the next one would follow it, and the next one would follow it in a kind of spiral pattern. So that, just to make it look a little bit more visually interesting. So what we're going to do, similar process to before, we're going to have this start just a wee bit after this starts to move. So we are going to make sure we've got them selected. We're going to keyframe them all individually here. Keyframe the current position, and then we're going to go to, again, it's a sort of looped animation, so we're going to do it just before this seats itself again. We're going to add another keyframe on all of these. Yeah. Cool. And this one, it stops there at 75, so we're going to move them all out. So let's select them, there we go. To about there. Keyframe again. So just select them all. You can keyframe by pressing I, but then that keyframes pretty much every single value, like location, rotation and scale, which can be a bit of a hassle when you've got way too many keyframes. So what we're actually going to do, select all of these, copy the keyframe, Control C, go over to, again just before this, which is where we want, select all these, Control open. Okay, that is completely the wrong thing, I've just pasted something from a different project I was looking at. There we go, Control V. So now that we've got these tie rods animated as a pack together, what we're going to do is we're going to select one of them right here. So we're going to have this one stay where it is, and then we're going to have this one essentially come out a little bit after it. So we're going to stagger it, and we're going to deselect all these keyframes and then select specifically this one. And then we're going to move this forward by, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4 keyframes. And we're going to do the same here, we're going to move it back. So select nothing, specifically this one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. So we're going to do this a couple of ways around. We're going to select just this one. We're going to move it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 keyframes. Same here. Also, instead of just dragging it manually, so you can set your key to here and do +8, and then just drag it along here. Right. So we're going to have this one be 4 on here, so that it gets brought back by 12. Minus 12. Pull this one all the way back to here. Right. So you can see as we go along, it's kind of staggered like that. So the way that's going to look when we animate it, I'm going to pull this back to the start. You see they all come out in that nice manner there, which I think is quite nice. So now what we're going to do, we're going to animate this here, the kind of front cap here, and let's go to about frame 60, just so that these have already pulled out. So we can now just do the same process. 40 minus 60, same thing here, and then let's say once these have all settled, let's go to about frame 95, pull that to about here. We're going to try and make sure that it's in front of here. Keyframe here. So what's the gap between that? That is 35 frames, so we're going to go here, minus 35, put that in again, and there we go. So you should be starting to get a hang of the process now. We're basically just going to keep doing this with all the parts until we are happy. So I'm just going to walk through that now. Also, another quick thing I actually forgot to mention earlier, we are going to parent, like we did before, we're going to parent the rings to the piston. So we're going to select this, shift select the other ring, and then shift select the actual piston. So the piston should be a kind of lighter yellowy orange, because that means it's the active object. Control P, there we go. So now when we animate the piston, the kind of ceiling O-rings move with it. So now we have the base animation. We've got it all set up like we want. And you can just run with this if you want, but what I'm actually going to do, we're going to go into the graph editor and we are going to start making some adjustments. So I'm going to get rid of the camera as well, just so we can start selecting everything. So I think the one part I don't really like about this animation is the casing here. In my opinion, it kind of is too sharp. Like it doesn't smoothly move in the way I'd like it to. So what I'm going to do is for each of these keyframes, you can actually adjust the interpolation type. So it defaults to the Bezier curve, but you can adjust it to make it say exponential, which is a bit much. Obviously, it kind of just is very, very sharp there. So you can obviously, as well as being the Bezier curve, you can adjust the actual curve weights here. So I think what I'm going to do So I might keep it a Bezier curve. Let's see if we like this. I think that might still be a bit too much. There we go, that is quite a lot nicer. You see now, it's fast at the start and then it kind of slowly moves into its actual position. So we're going to try and replicate that on this side. There we go. And that's a lot nicer. And we can do a similar thing on all of these. So you see it now has that sort of nice, quite professional looking flow to it, where it goes quite fast at the start and then it slowly sort of decelerates downwards until it hits its actual position, its final position there. So, something else we can do if we want, we can animate the camera a bit further. So right now the only thing on the camera we're animating is the focal length, but we can actually animate its position if we'd like. So, just to give it a little bit of extra flair, right? Again, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I'm just going to show you how to do it just in case you decide you want to. So, what we're going to do here, we're going to actually press I to keyframe, so we can keyframe all its stats here, like the position and the scale and all that, like its whole transform. This is free for keyframe 0. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to hit I, and then let's say once everything's animated out, we get ourselves here. Let's animate it in the middle actually, so frame 121, and we're just going to have it maybe go about here, right? And you see it kind of moves and bounces back like that, which I really like. Great. Look at that. Very, very nice. So, there's a lot of camera settings you can play about with as well. You can play with the like the sort of depth of field and the f-stop. The way I've set up my camera, I'll go into more depth in this in a future video as well. I'll also go into depth on this whole process and the actual camera setup, and a sort of more step-by-step guide in the Blender for Engineers course. Top link in the description if you're interested. I'd really recommend it if this video is helpful for you. So this is essentially how I set up my camera. I've got just an empty here, and on the camera I've got a track to a constraint, and then this essentially just, if you go into the view here, zoom out a bit, if I move this around, the camera just follows it, right? So say I want to move this so to focus on the end or the front or whatever, and you can animate this as well, so you can animate the camera moving. So I'm quite happy with that animation. I've got a whole scene set up here as well, so what I'm going to do quickly is I'm just going to go into the world shading here. We are going to turn off the HDRI, so we can just use the lighting set up here. So this is our animation rendered in the viewport. I've just got this quite nice, like, sort of pink backlight to it, and I'm going to render this out. So I hope this video was helpful to you. Like I said, Blender is really, really useful, especially for engineers, because a lot of CAD software gives you very kind of, I mean, it's CAD, so it gives you very precise animations and all of that, and if you're looking to try and make, say, like a pitch to investors or something like that, you kind of want to wow them a bit. You want some nice quality animations, and I teach you how to do that if you want a sort of step-by-step walkthrough, if you want me to teach you directly, and if you want a process, like a whole project to work through from start to finish, with, like I said, me teaching you. Check out the top link in the description. It's the Blender for Engineers course and the community. I think you'll really enjoy it.